What's up, YouTube? We're getting started in a few moments. Actually, in 30 seconds. Hold tight. One last check.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the rights of a human being.
To be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Monday in the beautiful city. Well, I always say that. It is Monday everywhere, but it is a beautiful day here in the city of Boston. We just got through celebrating Juneteenth over the weekend, and when I tell you, it is one of the most beautiful events that you ever will see. It was at least 5,000 people, predominantly Black, but I saw some white people. I saw some Hispanic people. I saw some Asian people celebrating Juneteenth, the actual day of our liberation, the end of slavery for African Americans. But it was a beautiful day. I mean, the sun wasn't shining as much as I wanted it to be shining on Saturday, but it was it still was a great event. I have some pictures up on the page. You could take a look at it and see. Man, you know what? And I waited until that day to actually get sick. So if you hear me sniffling and coughing or whatever, you guys have to excuse me today because I'm still fighting a cold that came down on me at the event. And so I was able to enjoy about 3 or 4 hours of it. And then the last 2 hours of it, I was just sitting in a corner looking like someone stole my candy or something. But anyway, I digress. It is Monday. A lot of things happening in the news. First service for Emmanuel AME took place yesterday, which I'm going to be honest with you, that's a little too fast. I think, and I understand the idea of resilience. I honestly do. And I understand the idea of not letting the quote unquote, well, no, not quote unquote. Hang on. Let me put my quotations in the right spot. Not letting the terrorists quote unquote win. Right. Because he's absolutely a terrorist. He's a racist terrorist, a racial terrorist, a thug. You know what? A lot of people are tripping over what to call this guy. He's all the above. He's a terrorist. He's a thug. He's an asshole. He's a murderer. He's a racist. He's a white supremacist. All the above. Whatever negative connotation you can imbue on this kid, he is that. I mean, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. So I'm not confused about what to call him. I call him all the above. And so I understand the idea of not letting this this maggot cause the people to cause the church to shut down. But and even more so from a church perspective, I understand them wanting to show that they can stand in the face of adversity. I understand that. But, you know, sometimes it's okay to take a moment to mourn and take a moment to yourself. You can publicly mourn, but sometimes, and this is just my opinion, and I'm not saying that they did the wrong thing, but to me, I think it would be I think it would have been appropriate if they decided to not have service on Sunday. But, you know, all the eyes of the world, you know, and that's the thing that bothers me is that they had to put on a show. They couldn't, but if they had service but refused to let the media in, I think I would have been okay with that, because with the media being there and streaming all over the world, everyone was watching. And so they had to put on a show, right? When can these people mourn? When can they mourn what happened at their church? When can they take a second and reflect and say something terrible happened? I mean, don't get me wrong. Now, I completely understand being in shock And as a Christian, sometimes when you're in shock, you go right into Christian survival mode, is what I'll call it. That happened to me when my father passed. The reason I was okay the first couple of days after my father passed was because I went into Christian survival mode. I started quoting scriptures, and I started, saying it's all going to be good, and, I can do all things and all these kind of, and it actually, quite frankly, helped me not go crazy the first couple of days. So I'm not knocking it. But the reality of it is that eventually the magnitude of the situation is going to drop on you like it did me. It was like 2 weeks after we buried my father that I couldn't even drive down the road. I had to pull over on the highway because I could not see the road, because I broke down in tears in my eyes, because I had not taken a single day to actually mourn between the time he died and like 3 weeks later, the week leading up to the funeral, and then 2 weeks later. And we do that a lot of times as religious people. And then there's an extra burden for some reason, there's an extra burden on African Americans to do this. Like, I guess it goes in line, to me, it kind of goes in line with that superstition of the supernatural strength of African Americans, like we can handle it and all this kind of thing. But, these people suffered this is not the correct identifier, adjective, but this is the only thing that's coming to mind: a cataclysmic event. They suffered something so terrible that they should not have had to put on a show on Sunday morning for the world to see. If they got together in the privacy of their sanctuary and did whatever they needed to do, that would have been absolutely okay. A couple other things with this entire weekend. So many things happening. Where do I start? So let me start with this guy before I forget. Glenn Beck, conservative shield, conspiracy theorist shield. He decided to have a prayer rally in South Carolina in front of the church, and it was great. It was, it was fine. Everybody came, and even an MSNBC Thomas Roberts anchor, he he broke down. He got emotional when he saw the crowd come, and he didn't know it was Glenn Beck. I bet you if he knew it was Glenn Beck, he wouldn't have gotten emotional. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, they came down the street marching and praying and everything else. Cool. But then they started to chant, not Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. Now we're going back to this debate over, and it's not really a debate. If you really can't understand the necessity at this point, if you cannot understand the necessity to assert that Black lives matters in the midst of the largest racist massacre. And I don't want to say since the bombing in 1963 of the little girls, because I don't have the numbers. I can't definitively say that it's been that long since this scale of lives were taken specifically, expressly for the reason of racism. But pretty close. This was the largest racial massacre in decades. At a minimum. But they could not bring themselves to say that Black lives matter. Glenn Beck should have stayed his conspiracy theorist ass wherever he was, because he came to co-op the sadness. He came to co-op the mourning. He came to co-op it because he could not understand. They could not allow this incident to go without them putting their stamp on it. But they could not put their stamp on it and fix their mouths at this event to say Black Lives Matter. I know over the weekend, there was a rally that crossed the bridge, and it was sponsored by the city. And then eventually in that rally, they began to say Black Lives Matter. But I'm talking about Glenn Beck. I can't even say his name. Such a horrible combination of syllables. Glenn Beck. He did not go there just under the auspices of solidarity. If he had, he would have seen that this was expressly an attack on Black people. But conservatives, and yes, conservatives, and actually, I will correct myself. There are conservatives as well as some progressives who deny that race is an issue whatsoever. Matter of fact, there's a debate group that I'm a part of, and some of the people who consider themselves progressives have been silent all over the weekend because they have no way of spinning this to not be about race. Because every other issue that comes across, they say, oh, it wasn't about race. You know, that guy shouldn't have run from the police. Oh, it wasn't about race. Even though we saw the video in McKinney, Texas, we saw the video where he skipped over every single white person and he went to the black people. It wasn't about race. So some of those same people who call themselves progressives, I think they're progressive only because of, anyway, I'm not going to put them out on blast completely, but they are incapable of spinning this. Here is what Fox News will try. I'll get to Fox News in a minute. Here is a guy. I won't say his name. He goes into a church, intentionally into a black church, and he kills expressly because he says, you are raping my people, my women, and you're taking over our country and you have to go. He uses racial expletives as he's killing black people. He is saying black people have to die. And yet there are people who want to assert that this was not about race. Or they try to say, well, we don't know what's in the Jeb Bush. We don't know what's in the mind of this guy. We know he has to be clearly deranged and we don't know what motivated him. Yes, we do, because he told us. Chris Christie was saying the same thing. We will never know what would cause a guy. Yes, we do know what would cause a guy to do this. He told us. And so that's what bothers me about Glenn Beck going over there and holding a prayer rally, right? He goes over there to hold a prayer rally, but he's not praying in solidarity. He's praying to take the attention away from those who understand the real reason this event happened. He goes over there to make conservative white people feel good about themselves. That's why he goes over there, because there's no way in the world that they could sit back. You know, the normal person, the normal average viewer is human enough to realize, oh my God, this is the most terrible thing that has happened in a long time in the United States. This is the most terrible racist thing that has happened in a long time in the United States. And they could not let that idea resonate in the minds of their viewers and their listeners. And so what do? The same thing they do every generation. They co-op, they appropriate, they misappropriate, they want to go and bring the attention to them. And so instead of saying Black Lives Matter, they say, oh, all lives matter. Well, yeah, all lives absolutely, without a doubt, matter. But right now, if you cannot look at Charleston, South Carolina, and Emanuel AME and realize that it was an assault against Black people, if you cannot stomach that reality, then you need to question your humanity. If you cannot realize that this was an express attack on Blackness, then you need to question your existence and question your humanity. It's really that simple. Now, on another level, on a very let's go one step further. There's now actually, let me start here. Yeah, I'll start here. The only thing now is this right here where I'm going right now is purely political. So deal with it. The only thing conservatives and Republicans fear more than God is the NRA. They are so terrified of this organization that they cannot fix their mouths to even consider. Hell, they can't even fix their mouths to mourn before they go into defense mode. Protect the NRA at all costs. They fear the NRA so much that even after the Sandy Hook massacre, they did not take a moment to mourn. What they did was immediately go to protect the guns. That's why I don't think anything significant is going to happen. You know, the most that could possibly happen, and we'll deal with this in the second segment, the most that I think can happen with regard to what the massacre in South Carolina is that they'll take down the Confederate flag, which would be a modest victory, you know, considering the magnitude of the event. I guess, you know, a consolation prize, and I'm all for it. Take down the flag. I'm absolutely all for it. Get it down. It does not deserve to be up. It should have been gone a long time ago. However, if they did not do anything after dozens of kids, small children, were killed in Newport, Connecticut. If I'm wrong, somebody will correct me. But at Sandy Hook Elementary School, they did nothing. The very first thing they did was protect, and they even had one of their Tea Party darlings said that, you know, your dead child should not, and I don't want to completely misquote him, I'm paraphrasing him, but the essence of what he said was your dead child should not affect my right to own a gun. The very first thing they do is protect the guns. Not because of, and you know, of course, they wrap it all in the fact that you can defend yourself, and I have the Second Amendment right, and all these kind of things. And, you know, the only person that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Oh no! Well, what the heck? All right, hold on, YouTube. Not sure what happened there, folks, but it looks like I lost my live feed. That's a first. Hang on, let me double check something. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go to a break because I need to make sure that doesn't happen again. We're gonna go to a break, and I'm going to see what's going on with my live feed. And when we come back, I'm going to let it rip a little bit more on these gun nuts, and even the Pope. The Pope is getting in on it, so that should be kind of uncomfortable for conservatives. All right, this is the Benjamin Dixon Show. Don't know what happened right there, but we will have it fixed after this break. And after this break, actually, let me cut that. Let me go to the longer break. I'm going to go to the longer break so that I can have a little bit more time to figure out what the hell is going on over here. We'll be back after this.
You're tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust. You've tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Hey,
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So pro tip for anyone out there that's doing their own radio show and podcast, broadcast, whatever you want to call it. Pro tip is never let your computer be in Wi-Fi mode. Always hardline it in. I took my laptop out this weekend to do some work and I had it on Wi-Fi mode and just a pro tip, make sure, because Wi-Fi, as great as it is, it matters that it drops every now and then. So anyway, back to my rant, right? If you want to call it a rant. The fact that these people did absolutely nothing after Sandy Hook should be an indicator that we're really pretty much not going to do anything after South Carolina. You know, if they didn't mourn, if they did not mourn with action, right? Mourn with actions to make sure that this doesn't happen again, then why in the world do you think they would do this after South Carolina? They didn't do anything for the children. They're not going to do anything for grown adults. Don't get me wrong. Like if you know, every single life is significant, you know, it should be the same visceral response where we move into action to make sure this never happens again. But no, the first thing they do is protect their guns. And that's the sad reality. That the only thing they fear more than God is the NRA. And the only thing they love more than God, the only things they love more than God are their guns, period. And so this should prove to be quite the conundrum now that Pope Francis has come out over the weekend, I believe it was yesterday, and stated that gun makers, if you are a person who makes weapons of war and consider yourself a Christian, you are a hypocrite. Wow. That was so the Pope calls out Christian gun makers. You know, and honestly, I think he should just go one step further and call out people who are obsessed with guns. I don't think there's anything wrong with gun ownership. Absolutely. I don't think there's anything wrong. I've considered having a gun, but there's a difference between having a gun. And now every 3 seconds, I'm going to look over my shoulder to make sure my broadcast is actually, my light is still red. But there's a difference between having a gun and making it possible for every maniac to have a gun. It is more difficult in some states to get the right to vote than it is to get a gun. Now, does that make sense to anyone? Well, it makes sense to conservatives, apparently. And so I'm curious as to how they're going to respond, because they're ostensibly supposed to be so religious and so pious that, you know, that you would think that they would listen to the Pope, right? On the surface, you would think, but we all know better than that. They are going to turn against the Pope, which I wonder how that's going to play with their Catholic base, because the Catholic base really, they really listen to the Pope without question. And the Pope is consistent. I will give him this. The Pope is still against he's still against abortion. You know, I don't think they've changed their mind on birth control. I do believe they may still be, I think he softened his tone with regard to gay marriage, but they're still against gay marriage. The Pope is consistently doing things that are in line with his faith, which, you know, by all means, it really, he's doing what, and he should be able to, right? So there are billions of well, I don't know if it's quite billions, but there are hundreds of millions, over a billion Catholics around the world. In the United States, that's going to have a significant impact if the Republican Party turns on the Pope, because he's now coming after the guns and the gun makers. So I'm really curious. The best thing they would probably do is ignore it, which I think would be a brilliant political strategy just to ignore it. But sometimes the Republicans are brilliant and sometimes they're absolutely not. They're brilliant when it comes to propaganda, but when it comes to just doing the smarter thing, sometimes they're not. So I'm curious to see what happens with that. I have a comment that came across. It said, of course, I lost the comment. Give me a second. Let me pull this comment up. It said, of course, it doesn't matter what the Pope says because Catholics aren't Christians. They're devil worshipers. Where's my boot symbol around here? Is it live? It's not live. Hey guys in the studio, if you're going to help me with sounds, you got to move a little quicker than that. That's funny on so many levels. I'll tell you about it another time. So here's the thing. I think they're going to finally start going back. Let's do a quick history lesson. I want you to understand the relationship between evangelicals and Catholics. Back when Kennedy was running for president, it was almost unheard of for a Catholic to seek the presidency of the United States. Up until that point, they had only been mainline Protestants. Protestants are and not really evangelicals, because evangelicalism really is a kind of a revival, a new thing. But as recent as John Kennedy had to assert his religious freedom to be a Catholic and to get elected to the presidency of the United States. So it's not as though Protestants and Catholics have seen eye to eye historically. That's obviously the case. But somewhere around 1980, when there was the marriage between evangelicalism and conservative Christianity, there was a blending of Catholicism and evangelicalism and Protestantism, if I said that correctly, a lot of isms. So there was a marriage, a blending, not a marriage. There was a blending, and people stopped asking questions about the difference between Catholicism and evangelicalism, Protestantism, for political purposes, because they had political goals. They had similar political goals, particularly in regard to opposing gay marriage and opposing abortion, right? But now, are we going to see a divide come back in because we have they have a pope? I'm Southern. I'm not Southern Baptist. I'm something. Anyway, but now they have a pope who is a social justice pope, who speaks out against the ills of capitalism, who speaks out against gun violence, who speaks out against, now he's speaking out against gun makers. He speaks out against poverty and hunger worldwide. He even speaks on behalf of the environment. I promise you, one of two things are going to happen. I don't know that they can ignore. I think the wise political move, and I'm speaking purely as a political scientist right now, right? Not as because I absolutely disagree with everything conservative, but I think the best political move for them would be to completely ignore the Pope, because they cannot win if they engage in a battle with the Pope over all of his stances on the environment, on his stance against gun violence now, and speaking out against gun makers. The next logical step is to speak out really against the NRA, but that's an American association, so he may not speak out against that. But if they engage with the Pope with regard to those issues, they would be what's the word? Not isolating. They would be basically making an enemy out of hundreds of, millions of Catholics in the United States. Because for some people, there is a line that you draw with regard to your religion and your politics. I believe that there are enough Catholics in the United States who would see, for the first time, thankfully, they would see that the Republican religion is not in line with their faith. So I think the Republicans are in deep stuff now, that there is a Pope who is actually a holistic Christian. I mean, he's like a biblical Christian. He's not like a pick and choose Christian. And he doesn't have to be, right? He's not there to be a political leader. He's there to be a religious leader. All right. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out, because I think the Republicans and the conservatives are going to find themselves like Rick Santorum. Rick Santorum says, leave the science up to the scientists with regard to the environment, speaking towards the Pope. He told the Pope to leave the science up to the scientists. Well, Rick Santorum, it really, really strikes me as odd that you want to leave this now up to the scientists when all along you guys are ignoring the scientists. But that's the conundrum. So he came out hard over the weekend, the Pope, man. I'm not a Catholic, but I am a fan of this Pope. He came out hard on gun makers, rather. And I think here's another thing that happened over the weekend. So President Obama last week, he gave a speech with regard to South Carolina, and he said he's had to do it. And he has had to do it 14 times in his presidency. That is sad in itself. Right. But then he began to speak on the fact that this does not happen with the frequency that it happens in the United States. It does not happen abroad with the frequency that it happens in the United States. Okay. Enter in all the Republicans who don't fear God as much as they fear their guns, don't fear God as much as they fear the NRA, rather. And they've come up with, and I want to pull it up because somebody was tweeting about it this morning. Some crazy people on Twitter. You know, President Obama is lying about this not happening across. Let me go to this Steph 93065 and pull up her tweet. Right. So they've tweeted a image from the IJR review. Anyway, let me get to the essence of it. Basically, they're saying if we compare based on percentages, based on population size, that this is actually mass shootings actually do happen around the world with some frequency. And as you look at this chart that they tweeted, you see in like the UK, mass shooting since 2009, 1. You see like, I don't know, Germany, mass shooting since 2009, 2. You see somewhere like maybe, I don't think they had Japan on there, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. For all these other nations, get to the United States, 38. Now, if you can't look at the raw numbers and say, okay, that's crazy, because we're not talking about per capita GDP. We're not talking about the number of people on welfare per population size. We're not talking about, we're talking about mass shootings where people lose their lives. But now Republicans want to say, well, let's look at the numbers based on the population size, as a percentage of the population size. It's amazing that they will go to statistics. They will go to some type of scientific observation when it's convenient for their narrative, right? But even in this example, they're wrong, because if you drill down in the United States, and they broke down these nations by whether or not these nations had, and I gotta find this tweet. Let me find this tweet, because they broke it down based on whether or not these nations had restrictive or permissive gun laws. And so here's my thing. In the United States, so they categorize the nations, whether they're permissive or restrictive, and they categorize the United States as permissive. Well, that's not necessarily true. On a state-by-state level, gun laws change. Gun laws in New York are some of the most restrictive gun laws you will find anywhere in the world. Right now, as opposed to Kansas, I assume that you could be a 5-year-old and go get a gun in Kansas because they're so not restrictive. All right, here's the data. Right. OK, so based on, and they wanted to compare it by percentage. Norway, they only had 1 fatal rampage shooting since 2009. Finland, 2. Slovakia, 1. Israel, 2. Switzerland, 2. United States, 38. Belgium, 1. Netherlands, 1. Germany, 3. United Kingdom, 1. Canada, 2. France, 1. And they were like, well, if you adjust for population size, it's really not that bad. If you adjust the number of mass shootings for the size of their population, then, you know, Finland is just as bad as the United States. I want you to tell that to all the people who lost family members in those, right? And then also what this little piece of data, quote unquote data, that Republicans are rallying behind and conservatives are rallying behind, it does not tell you the total number of people killed. Right. So we have no idea what the actual number of deaths are, which is completely relevant when you're discussing the type of weapons that you have access to. If you have an automatic weapon or semi-automatic gun, you absolutely can kill more people in a shorter period of time. Right. So it doesn't discuss that. But even more nuanced, if you drill down, states have different levels of gun laws. And so if I guarantee, and I don't know the results of this study, but if you compare the restrictive laws of a state like New York and the population of a state like New York, and you compare it to the non-restrictive laws of, say, Texas and the population of Texas, which is a pretty big state, but still, if you compare, I guarantee you, my money, I would make a bet that you would see that there is a disproportionate amount of mass shootings in states with non-restrictive gun laws. Because based on this little piece of data that they're passing around, you would assume that a state like New York, or a city, even if we drill down on a city level, a city like New York with 11 million people would be leading the nation in mass shootings, not homicides, not your run of the mill, if there is such a thing, murders, but just mass shootings. And I honestly don't believe that that's the case. Every time we hear of a mass shooting, it's Columbine, it's Newtown, it's Aurora, Colorado. I don't recall mass shootings, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not recall mass shootings happening in a place like New York, not in the 2009 to 2015 timeframe that they're using this piece of data for. So they're being disingenuous, and they're being very propagandistic, to be honest with you. They've taken a select piece of data, trying to say that the president is lying, because of course that's the most important thing in this conversation, whether or not President Obama is fudging the numbers on his statement that he spoke out of concern and over the death of 9 people. President Obama said that this doesn't happen in other developed nations, and so that's the most important thing here, is that President Obama did not speak with statistical certainty. Not the fact that 9 people were killed, not the fact that this happens with too much frequency in the United States. No, what's important to them is that they protect their guns. What's important to them is that they bow down before the NRA. What's important to them is that above all else, lives don't matter, guns matter. That should be the new hashtag for the Republicans, for conservatives. Guns matter. And for any Democrat that's running around protecting the NRA in this, as if this is about the NRA, right? As if this is about, protecting your guns. No, this is about how do we stop mass shootings from happening with such frequency. Since 2009, 38 mass shootings, and this data did not include the most recent one. Since 2009, 38 mass shootings have happened in the United States. That, in and of itself, should make every person upset. And you should be even more upset at people who defer to protecting the NRA over the lives of citizens. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We'll be back after this.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans. When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer. Warm fleece on a cold day. I want to be a bike that races around the country. I want to be a bench on a forest trail. When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Welcome back. Oh man, let me tell you something. One thing I am not above is laughing at myself. If you were watching YouTube and you saw my big ass fall out of the seat, oh my good Lord, that was the funniest thing. I mean, I was reaching down to pick something up, and then all of a sudden the entire studio just started shaking. I lost my balance and fell. Oh goodness. So make sure that you mark that time frame at on the YouTube video, because like I said, I can laugh at myself, boy, I tell you. Okay, anyway, so let's talk a little bit more about all of the things that are happening over the weekend. The biggest thing that I think is happening, and I said I think the only concession, and because that's really what it is, the only concession that the national conversation can get from this tragedy would be for the Confederate flag to come down in South Carolina. And there's an entire movement online, on Twitter, social media, actually not just Twitter, all over the internet, to take down the flag. Hashtag take down the flag. And I think, you know what, it should have been down, right? But we'll get to that. But what's happening is it's because of the nature of political opposition, because the parties must distinguish themselves, right, from the other party. The GOP conservatives have found themselves stuck in a quagmire where they either have to defend this Confederate flag or they have to burn the bridges with the Southern strategy that they've used for so many years. And because of the nature of political opposition, they have to distinguish themselves from the Democrats. So many of them absolutely are defending the bigotry that is represented in the Confederate flag. How strange. I mean, they're in a really, but not that I feel bad for them, but they're in a really bad position, but they are having to defend this symbol of treason. Because that's what it is. And this is what bugs me out, right? How in the world do you call yourself a patriot? How can you go under the guise of patriotism when the Confederate flag is the biggest symbol of treason in all of American history? It is the one thing that represented an existential threat to the United States that could have marked the end of the United States as we know it. We would have been living in an entirely different world right now. So how do you call yourself a patriot when you rally behind the Confederate flag? And let me take a step back. The fact that they lowered the United States flag to half staff, the South Carolina flag to half staff, but they left the Confederate flag flying at full mast. That is the most insulting slap in the face ever. And so everyone is going after the flag. Take down the flag. Rightfully so. It should be down because it represents treason. It absolutely represents white supremacy and racism. There is no way that it does not represent that, because the people who cling to it the most are the racists and white supremacists. It is like the insignia of the Klan. It is the standard bearer of, that is what they carry around, that embodies their entire movement. It has been so since like forever, which is not absolutely true, but still, hyperbolically speaking. You know, you can look back at footage from the 60s when they were not ashamed of their racism, because that was a standard in the United States history. You can look back and you see pictures of people waving the flag, the Confederate flag, with signs that say, "Go home, nigger." You know, which I will put a pin there. I got to talk about people telling black folks to go home. What happened over the weekend, but it absolutely, even to today, when the Klan goes out to march, which they are doing so with more frequency because they feel comfortable. You know, we've created a society where the Ku Klux Klan actually feels comfortable enough to come out in public, right? Sure, they have the right to free speech. By all means, they do, but they should be ashamed. I mean, we should publicly shame them enough. It should not be acceptable. They should have to hide. They really should have to hide and go to their meetings privately. Should they not be able to meet? No. Should they not be able to exist? No, they should be able to exist because they have the right to, right? But that doesn't mean that we as a public, we as the general mass, the general public of the United States should make it acceptable enough for them to march down the street. They should be ashamed of themselves. Like, would we allow a pedophile march to go down the street? Because that's, if you ask me, they're just as disgusting and despicable as the worst pedophiles, right? So would we allow a pedophile march to just go down the street and say, hey, you know, we didn't break the law, but we're proud to be pedophiles? You know, that's just as disgusting as the Klan. We're proud to be Klansmen. We're proud to be racist. And here's the thing, for all the people who are saying that, you know, we don't know the motivations of Dylan. Damn it, I meant to not ever say that boy's name on my show. We don't know the motivations of this killer. But we do. You know, he has plenty of pictures showing his allegiance, not to the United States, which is amazing because he probably would consider himself a patriot, right? But he's burning the American flag, but he's waving the Confederate flag. You know, so we clearly understand his motivations. You know, we absolutely understand that his love and longing and allegiance was to the Confederacy. And there's plenty of people around the nation in the South, and some of the, you know, I actually saw some Confederate flags here in Boston, which is you know, doesn't make a lot of sense considering the historical demarcation of the South and the North. But anyway, twisted ideologies can go anywhere. But anyway, and I completely lost my train of thought going off on that tangent. But the point is this: we know his motivations, we know his allegiance, and we know that there are plenty of, here it is, this is what I was going to say, there are plenty of people around the nation who still firmly believe that the South should have won and that the South will rise again, you know. And then they try to guise it as heritage, not hate. Well, it may be your heritage, but it is a heritage of hate. It is a heritage of white supremacy. It is a heritage of racism. How can you, this is the twisted world that we live in, people. You can actually fix your mouth to say that we think black people are inferior, but we're not a racist. We think that the blacks should have stayed slaves, and we should, you know, because it's a states' rights issue. We're not racist. It's a states' rights issue. You know, we should have been able to decide that at a state level, whether or not blacks should have been slaves, but we're not racist. You know, that's the twisted backwards world that we live in, where people can actually go underneath the guise of not being a racist when they are saying and doing and representing and signifying the most racist things in history. And now you have a whole heap of conservatives, because they must stand in political opposition to anything progressive, that they are now defending this flag. They are defending this flag. And does it really make sense for you to defend something that was the greatest threat? There's no threat outside of the United States greater than the threats that are inside of the United States. Let's start there. There's no power that poses an existential threat to the United States. The threat to the United States is from within. It has always been from within. It is currently from within. And historically, it was from within. And the greatest threat was the Confederacy. That is the one thing in the history of the United States that almost destroyed the United States. So I'm asking all of these conservatives around the world who are defending this Confederate flag, do you honestly believe that you are a patriot when you are defending the one symbol that threatened the existence of the United States? Riddle me that. Answer me that. The answer is no. You are not a patriot, but you allow your political opposition to progressivism. You allow, because progress would be to take down that flag. Moving the nation forward would be to take down that flag. Moving the nation forward would absolutely mean the Ku Klux Klan and all the other white supremacist groups should go in hiding. You should do your thing. Go on your plantations and go to your resorts, or not resorts. Go to your little private lots of land and practice your guns and everything. Do that in the privacy of seclusion, right? But you should not be able. This is not what America is. America should not have people running through the streets proudly, without any social ramifications, proudly declaring that they are not only racist, but fascists, neo-Nazis, and then to add insult to injury, call themselves patriots. That is the cognitive dissonance that if they could explain, they would deserve a Nobel Prize. But they can't explain it because it doesn't make sense. And it simply means that they think America is what they decide it should be, and them only, no one else. America should be what it was. America, and that's what conservatism is, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. I know you get tired of me making everything about politics, but it absolutely is. Everything at the end of the day is political and economical. Conservatism is, let's keep America where it was. And if you've never seen it before, you see it absolutely right now. Right now, they are saying, let's keep America at a time where it is okay to fly the symbol of racism and white supremacy. That is what conservatism will do to a nation. Conservatism will say, America was fine when we were in Jim Crow. America was fine when we were lynching black people. America was fine when there was segregation. So let's keep it that way, right? Let's keep the symbol of it. Let's keep the symbol of white supremacy, the Confederate flag. Let's keep it as a part of all of the southern states' flags. You know, let's embed it inside of the flag so it can never go away. And then South Carolina is so bold as saying, well, we're not going to put it in our flag because it doesn't match the colors. You know, the type of blue that we have in there doesn't really match the stars and bars, but we're going to fly it by itself. They want to conserve the period of time in American history when the only people in power were Christian white men. And that is what the Confederate flag represents. The Confederate flag represents a yearning, a longing, a desire to go back to familiar times when they didn't have to deal with Hispanics, to better times when they didn't have to deal with blacks not knowing their place, a better time when women knew their place was to be quiet and to be at home and fix dinner and not go to work, when gays were in the closet and nobody even knew that gays were in America because they were so afraid to come out. That's a better time that conservatives are longing for. They oppose everything that would change the face of America. They oppose immigration. They oppose any type of contraception that would give women control over their bodies and whether or not they can stay at home or whether or not they can go into the workplace. They oppose equal pay for equal work. They oppose anything with regard to the LGBT movement, gay marriage. They would rather watch this. They would rather the Klan be free to march down the road than they would a gay pride parade. These are the type of people that we're dealing with. This is the type of ideology that we're dealing with. And when all these people who are protecting this flag, when all of these people who are shouting about, its heritage and not hate, all of these people who are defending this, they're not just defending a piece of fabric with stars and bars on it. They're protecting an ideology that says America is only for Christian white men, and white women, you should know your place and just stay at home and don't say anything, which is so ironic because I see some of the most fervent defenders of the Confederate flag are women. I guess they're okay with the 1950s iteration of women's rights, with the place that women had in America then. But I want you to look at that. I really think juxtapose the freedom and the protection and the cover that they're giving racism and white supremacy by defending this flag, as opposed to, let's say, immigrants coming across the border. They are more offended. They are more offended by a Hispanic person, first generation American, born in America, and their parents, the dreamers, right? They're more offended by the dreamers than they are by this flag. They're protecting this flag, but they oppose anything else that is of progress. This should know. And actually, somebody made a great point on Twitter. It wasn't just white supremacy against blacks. It was white supremacy against Jews. So now let's see. This is why. This is absolutely why conservatism is a dying ideology, because it is dependent upon angry white Christian men and the women who love them. That's what it's dependent on. And then you can have some ancillary. You have some little bits and pieces here and there of you have a black person here who sold their soul. You have a Hispanic person there. You even have a gay person here and there that sold their souls to conservatism. But the majority, the lion's share of what makes up conservatism is white Christian men, and that's why they are protecting this Confederate flag so much, because it represents the anger and the animus of Southern white Christian men. And this is how they get them out to the polls, because so long as they can hold on to the idea of the Confederacy, it makes living in America more palatable or something. Does it make it easier for you that you have to wave the American flag? It makes it easier so that by waving the Confederate flag. Let me flip that sentence around so it makes more sense. Does waving the Confederate flag make it easier for you to wave the American flag? I mean, this is really what we're dealing with here. We're really dealing with people who consider themselves patriots when in actuality, they represent the greatest threat in American history to the United States. All right, folks, I think I'm going to cut it here today. So much more to talk about, but I don't want to open up on another can. We only have a few minutes left. So check us out online, www.thebenjamindixonshow.com. Check us out on Twitter at the BPD Show. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/The Benjamin Dixon Show. And most importantly, subscribe to YouTube. Support the video channels, and we'll keep putting out good videos for you. Keep listening as we get ready to tackle conservatism, bigotry, hypocrisy, everything else that we tackle. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. I'm going to get out of here and go do something with my life. Have a good one.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.